Hey guys, I'm Brushy Puppet and today I'm going to be going over Apex Legends settings for beginners on console. The reason I say this for beginners is because there are a few settings I'd potentially change if you're a bit more confident and a bit more advanced. However, I will mention these differences when covering each setting, so even if you are more confident, I'd still stick around as you may learn something. I also want to point out these are just my recommendations, so they may need slightly tweaking to fit how you play. But here's what I recommend for people who are just starting out or trying to get a bit better and are changing their settings for the first time. So the first setting in the gameplay tab is interact prompt style. This is basically how much information is shown when you hover over a weapon or item. As you can see, default gives you a mini overview of the thing you're hovering over, whereas combat mode doesn't. As a beginner, I would recommend having this on default as it lets you know what kind of weapon or item you're picking up and what it does. However, if you're a bit more confident, you may want to turn this off as the compact tip takes up less space, meaning you can see more of what is going on the screen. The second setting is button hints. If you're a beginner, I would definitely recommend leaving them on so you can learn what the buttons do, and to be honest, they don't really get in the way or block the screen, so even if you're advanced, you might as well leave them on. Then we have crosshair damage feedback, and this is the type of indicator that shows when you deal damage. There are three options for this setting: off, so no indicator, an X, or an X with a shield indicator, which shows you the level of shield the enemy you're hitting has. If you're new to the game or not too confident, I would have it on either of the modes with the indicator so you can definitely be sure you're hitting the enemy. However, I personally have the indicator off as I think it looks cleaner and I can tell when I'm hitting my enemy due to the next setting being on. And this setting is damage numbers. I have this on stacking so I can see exactly how much damage I've done without having to add it up myself mid-fight. This lets me roughly know the health of my opponent and whether they're low and I should push them. I use this number as an indicator that I've hit my target instead of the X in the setting above. The alternatives to stacking are off, which I would not recommend, floating, which shows the damage each individual bullet has done, or both, which shows both the total damage and the damage of each bullet. Now, ping opacity I have on faded, and I'm going to quickly show you the difference. As you can see, the default ping is still visible when aiming down sights, whereas on faded it's more transparent. I prefer transparent because if you and your teammates are pinging where the enemy is, you don't want the ping to block your vision. Obituaries is the kill feed, and I have this on. I think it's useful as you can work out what guns your enemies are using. However, you may want to turn it off so you can see more of the screen. To be honest, this setting is a preference, but personally I just leave it on. Minimap rotation is also down to preference. I have it off as I don't like when the map rotates, but if you're used to games that do have a rotating minimap, then it could be good to turn it on. Now, weapon auto cycle on empty I would have on if I was new, as it means when you run out of ammo it will automatically switch to your next gun. However, if you're more confident, you'll know when your gun has run out of ammo, and so you'll know when to switch it yourself. If you have this setting on, and you go to switch it yourself, you end up switching back to the gun with no ammo in. This can confuse you and cause you to lose the fight, so I would recommend trying to learn to switch it yourself. Auto sprint I have off just so I can creep around corners, so I'd recommend just leaving it off, and that's the same with double tap to sprint. I have this off just so I can sprint a bit quicker without having to double tap it. Jetpack control at the minute is just for the new Legend Valkyrie, and you can have it on hold, as in you press and hold to fly, or toggle, as in you press to fly and press again to stop flying. This setting is just preference, but I have personally just left it on toggle. Incoming damage feedback is the type of arrow you see when you're taking damage. You can have it on 2D, 3D, or both. I personally have it on 3D so I can tell exactly where I'm getting hit from, so I'd recommend just leaving it on that. Taking damage, closes death box menu or crafting menu is pretty self-explanatory, and if I were new, I would leave this on as it can be pretty hard to tell if you're being shot at when looting, so if it closes a menu for you, you can react quicker. I know a lot of better players have this off so they can shield swap mid-fight, but personally, I like to keep it on. Hop-up pop-up I would recommend leaving on if you're new so you can know which each of the hop-ups do. If you're more confident and you know what they'll do, then you can turn it off, but honestly, I don't really see much benefit to turn it off, so I've left it on. The rest of the settings on this tab are just preference and accessibility, so it's up to you what you do with these. The next tab is controller setting. The first thing on this page is button layout. Now I have this on default, but there are a few options that you might want to test out and see if they're for you. You can also make your own custom one, which can come in handy if you play claw, or if one of your buttons is a little less responsive, you could change it round. Next is stick layout, so you can change how you move and look with the sticks. I'm not really sure why you'd want to change them, so I have them on default, but you can always give them a try and see if you prefer one of the other options. The next setting is how the interact and reload button behaves. I would personally recommend having this on tap for both, as it shortens the time it takes to do things, but again, if you're used to games where you have to press and hold, you might want to have it on the same, but I would just suggest learning just to tap so you can be more efficient in game. Now, crouch button I personally have on toggle as I think it makes it easier to slide, but if you're more advanced and like to bunny hop, you might want to put it on hold. I have aiming down sights on hold, but this is just preference, so if you're used to games where you press once to aim down sights and then again to stop aiming down sights, you might want to put this on toggle. Survival slot button is the button you press to use the survival items, aka the respawn beacon and the heat shields. I don't see any benefit to turn this off, so I've just left it on. Trigger dead zones I recommend having off, so your triggers are more responsive and so shoot as soon as you even slightly press them down. However, if your controller is slightly damaged, this can cause you to shoot when you're not pressing it, so I would recommend trying to get the lowest you can without it shooting when you don't want it to. With menu cursor speed, you want to slightly increase this every now and then so you can go through the menus, for example when looting, as fast as you can, but you don't want it to be too high that you can't control it. Now I'll be going into further detail with look sensitivity in another video, but if you're new, I would recommend just using the numbers. I would start with the default, which is 3, but if you think this is too low, you can move it up a number until you find one that feels better for you. With movement dead zones, I have this on small, so your controller can feel more responsive, but again if your controller is damaged or you have controller drift, then putting it on a larger one might help. Inverted look I have off, but if you want to put it on then you can. Now vibrations, I would recommend turning off as soon as you can so you don't learn to rely on them. Although they can help you know when you're taking damage, it can actually make your aim worse. For example, if you've lined your sights on an enemy and you start shooting, the vibrations can cause your finger to move slightly so you're no longer on the enemy. Because of this, I would try learning how to play without them on as soon as you can. Now onto video settings. What brightness you should use varies depending on person and what TV or monitor you're using, so that's pretty much up to you. Field of view is how much of the screen you can see. Here's a small field of view, and here's a bigger field of view. As you can see a lot more with a larger field of view. However, everything appears smaller, which makes it harder to hit enemies. I personally have my field of view on 84, but I'd say have a play around with it and find one that suits you. Sprint view shake is how much what you can see shakes when you're running. I have this on minimal, just so that when I'm running, I can see loot and enemies more clearly. Now everything on the audio tab is preference. I personally have everything on 100% except for the music because I think they're quite loud and I always found myself turning my headset down between matches and then having to turn it up again mid-match. But like I said, this is just preference. But yeah, these are all the settings that I would recommend. Try them out, tweak them if need be, and I hope they help. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed it, consider checking me out on Twitch. There'll be a link in the description. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye!